right.
Welcome to the show, Melissa.
Nice to have. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So, what's your sober date?
October 24th, 2018.
Okay, so you're coming up on 6 years.
I am coming up on 6 years.
That's exciting.
It's very exciting because I had 5 years sober and I relapsed and then went back out there for about 4.5 years. And
So,
then
we'll get on to that. What was going on October 23rd, 2018?
I had CPS in my life. I was fixing to lose my kids. I had just come out of a domestic violent relationship. And so I literally had nothing left in my home. I had sold everything that I owned. And so it was time for a change.
All right. So, where are you from originally?
I'm from Michigan, but I live in Texas, and I've been here since 2001. I have no family here but my kids, and I love it.
Yeah, my family's about 3 hours away.
Okay.
They're in Jersey, and I'm in the middle of nowhere in PA.
In PA?
Why'd you leave Michigan?
I was in a domestic violent relationship. The guy that I was with had assaulted me many of times, broke my nose, blacked my eyes, fattened my lips. And I had told my mom if I didn't leave, she would end up burying me. And so it was a time to just take that jump and go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you were really just, did you have any family in Texas, and you just were starting over in somewhere?
Well, it was somewhere new to me, but I had some friends here that used to live in Michigan, and they knew what type of relationship I was in. And they just said, the door's always open when you're ready. And so it took a few years to get there, a few beatings. And
Yeah.
so I just had enough, and I packed up me and my oldest son, and we came here.
Okay. And even though you've been in Texas for 20 years and you already have the Southern drawl.
I do. When I talk to my mom, she's like, "Oh my goodness, Melissa," and I'm like, "Yeah, I know."
I would have thought you were born and raised there with that accent.
Really? No, I was born and raised in Michigan. As Texans say, I'm a damn Yankee because I've stayed.
So were you in the Michigan State part or the University of Michigan part?
Closer to Michigan State. I was in the capital, Lansing, and so right there in the middle. So
okay, I asked my brother is a big Michigan fan,
okay.
University of Michigan, and we've been there to a game, and it was a really cool stadium. So I was wondering which part, but if you're closer to Michigan State,
yeah,
then I'm assuming then you're a Michigan State fan growing up.
I would say growing up, but not so much now.
Yeah, you grew out of it.
Yeah, Texan style.
Yeah. So you grew up around Michigan, grew up in Michigan. What did you discover first, drugs or alcohol?
Drugs.
What kind of drugs? Weed?
I started with weed. I quickly moved to cocaine. And then I chose the worst is methamphetamine. And that was my drug of choice.
All right. So how old were you when you discovered weed?
I was about 14 years old. Had been through some sexual assault as a child. Had a couple other just tough experiences in life. And so I just wanted to try it. Thought it was going to be cool. Started there, and it quickly changed to cocaine. It wasn't giving me what I wanted, and so.
How quickly did you try to just smoke weed before you made the jump into cocaine?
It was about a year. So I was about 15 years old. Jumped into cocaine. Probably about, go ahead.
I gotta ask, at 15, how do you get turned on to cocaine? Because I didn't discover cocaine until I was 22, and I started drinking at 11 and started smoking weed at 13. Okay. I was a heavy drinker in my adolescence and teenage years. Mm-hmm. So I didn't have connections to get cocaine as a teenager. Yeah. So, and I was one of the bad kids, you know what I mean? One of the kids that that got into trouble and drank and partied.
Yeah.
So how did you discover cocaine at such a young age?
The guy that I was seeing, or thought you're seeing, his brother was much older than us, and so um, they were in my brother's room, and you could hear him snorting it, and I wasn't stupid, and so I went in there and I just joined. It was just something that, hey, I want to try this, and let's see what it does, and then I liked it, and that became my drug of choice with alcohol. So
Yeah,
I
cocaine and
could,
alcohol go hand in hand.
yes,
I was just
yeah,
telling that to my mom the other night. We were talking about, it's starting to get around our. I grew up in a 1 square mile town where everybody knows everybody,
okay,
and there's someone from that town that is gone from cocaine to crack. And my mom is such an innocent person.
hmm,
She was like, "Why does somebody, how does somebody do even cocaine?" I'm
yeah,
like, "Well, cocaine and drinking they go hand in hand, mom. You
they do.
know, if you're a big cocaine user, you're usually drinking too,
Yep,
and it's eventually if you do enough coke, you're gonna meet crack
yeah,
and be taken off on a bender."
oh yeah,
And that's what happened with somebody that we know from town.
okay,
I don't have to mention names, but if they're watching, they know exactly who they are.
hmm,
So you discover cocaine, and do you start buying it on your own, or do you just do it when it's like around with other people because you were seeing this other guy?
I was just doing it with other people at first.
Oh, that reminds me. You said you had a brother, and your brother was older?
I have older brothers and I have younger brothers, but I was doing it with the guy's brother.
Oh, I see. Okay, so
So
you were
yeah, he
you
was
were
the older one, hanging out. Let's do this. Let's have some fun. And so,
so you got how many older brothers?
let's see. For me, I have two older brothers, and then I have a younger brother.
So you're kind of the middle child and the only girl.
Nope. There's five other girls. But I just have yeah, it's a huge family. The older ones are just half, and then I have one baby brother that is my full blooded brother. So I
Oh,
grew up with
okay.
just a brother. He dabbled in, marijuana was his big thing. Um, I don't even think he did cocaine. Now I could be completely wrong, but I know he was a big pot smoker for very many years.
I hear that. So was I. I just quit that 5 months ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it was my first 420 without weed, and since I was 13 years old.
Oh wow.
So, and I'm
Yeah.
38 now, and I'm 38. So I had 25 good years of celebrating 420,
Yeah.
and I got through the hardest one because my sober date. Well, it depends on how you look at sober and clean dates. I have my recovery date of
Hmm.
when I learned about recovery, and I've
Yeah.
been in recovery from opioids
Okay.
since April 25th of 2018.
Okay.
I've been sober from alcohol since Leap Day of 2020,
Okay.
so 4.5 years.
Yeah.
And I quit weed and benzos, both prescribed to me. I had medical marijuana card. I was prescribed Ativan. I was prescribed Valium, and I started taking way too much of my
Okay.
benzo, and I was overusing, over medicating.
Yeah.
And let's be real, I was over medicating on my weed too. I was smoking way more than I was prescribed to.
Yeah.
Um, so I decided to cut out both of them at the same time
Okay.
and just be completely sober. Now I
So,
can pass my own drug tests.
right. And that's the best thing is being able to pass the drug test.
It's
Um,
the first time I've been able to say that since I was a teenager that I could pass a drug test. Um,
Congratulations.
thank you. So you're 15 years old, you discover cocaine, and you're doing it when you're around other people that are doing it. You discovered weed first. How long did it take you to discover alcohol?
I was probably 18. I wasn't, so I had a kid at 16. I was pregnant, had my first child. So it was about 18, getting my own place. enjoying life, having the friends buy it. That was a lot of it. Was the cocaine and alcohol for the longest, and then I did that for many years.
Just alcohol and cocaine?
Yeah, for many years. Um, and then I went back to a little bit of marijuana because I thought, hey, let's just add it in there, and I didn't like it. And then I went to the meth.
Okay, so how'd you get introduced to Mr. Meth?
My ex husband, um, we were
Is he the
together.
one? Was your ex-husband the one that you had a kid with?
No, well, I
Okay.
have two kids with him, but my first son is his dad isn't part of his life, so it was just me and him growing up. And then when I come to Texas, I met my first husband, and he introduced me to meth, and that became my best friend. And I was drinking at the time when I first moved here, and I was at the bar 6 nights a week. I was partying up, doing everything in the sun. I was doing some cocaine then, um, and then I went to meth, and then I realized you can't mix meth and alcohol. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
It does not work. And so I liked the meth high better. So I was like, well, I'll give up alcohol and I'll just go for the meth.
How old were you when that happened?
I was 25.
Okay, so wait, we skipped over something. Um, so you were in Michigan
Mm-hmm.
and you had a son at 16.
Yeah.
And then you discovered drinking at 18.
Yeah.
And do you get into a relationship with some, because you said you left a bad relationship?
Yeah. I was with the one that his brother did cocaine. Um,
Okay.
I was with him. Um, we were just really friends when we first started doing cocaine. We got together when we were 17 and we stayed together from 17 to 21. We drank, we did cocaine together. Um, but just when he would drink, he would become very abusive. And so it was just like, that's when I decided I was going to make a change. And I come to Texas when I was 21.
Okay, so yeah, you were young to start over again at 21
Yeah.
and came on down to Texas.
Yep.
And I know what it's like to be new in an area. I moved 30 times during my addiction,
Oh, wow.
between 5 different states in 10 years. And when I moved to North Carolina, it was right after literally my fiance committed suicide.
Mm.
3 days after I left New Jersey.
Oh,
She
wow.
was supposed to come down to North Carolina the next month.
Okay.
But she was bipolar schizophrenic. She was really sick. And I left on a Thursday or a Friday, and then that Sunday, Monday, she did that.
Okay.
So I spiraled, even though I was a pillhead and loved pills and opiates,
Yeah.
I couldn't get them as readily accessible in North Carolina. So I turned back to my old love of alcohol, and it was at the bars 6, 7 nights a week.
Yep.
Started making connections, people at the bar. And as you know, what's the easiest thing for me to find going to the bar 6 nights a week?
Okay.
Cocaine. Exactly.
Yep.
Next thing you know, I'm doing lines with the kitchen staff. you know,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like it just spirals so quickly. And I know how that goes of being in a new environment. And I had the same bar that I went to 6 nights a week. I had
Yep.
my own chair there that they saved for me every night because I was such a good tipper. I was making good money and
Yeah.
I could afford my habit.
Hmm.
And no, it was cheaper to live down North Carolina that wasn't Jersey. So like I was making good money to like be able to afford going to the bar and spend $100 a night.
Yeah.
Um, and then tip really well for the entire night.
Oh, yeah.
So my drinks always came first. My seat was always saved for me. They wanted to make sure I was comfortable and they took care of me there.
Yeah.
Um, still remember their names were John and Mike were the bartenders there.
Okay.
And that was 2015. So it's been 9 years since I lived there, but I still remember my bartenders' names. um, so you come down to Texas. How long does it take until you meet your first husband?
I met him pretty quick. I had moved into my own house within 3 weeks. I just stayed with some friends. I was able to get a house. I had a job. I was working.
And your son's 5 at this point, right?
Yes. And so he lived across the street from me. And he had a girlfriend at the time, and they were expecting a baby. And I was like, hey, could you babysit my kid? And they're like, what are you going to go do? And I'm like, I'm going to the bar. Like, what else am I going to do? I have nothing else to do. And so I started going to the bar 6 nights a week. I'm very lucky never to get a DWI. Never. But there's many a times that I don't even remember coming home. I don't remember how I got here. I don't know. But they would keep him 6 nights a week. And then we just ended up having a relationship. And I got pregnant pretty quick. And he was still terrible. But when you're in addiction, you do dumb things. He was still with his girlfriend at the time. And I ended up pregnant. And so I had told him, like, I'll raise this baby by myself. I already have one. I can do this. And he was like, no, I'm going to choose you. And I was like, all right, cool. So we got into a relationship. About 2 years into it, we got married. And so, but that whole time, the first probably year and a half I was here, I was at the bar 6 nights a week.
Okay. And so you were doing coke then too?
Mm-hmm.
But you gave it all up when you got pregnant?
I did. With my second son, I got sober, did the pregnancy right, did everything that I was supposed to do as a mom. And as soon as he was born, I was back to doing cocaine, drinking, doing a little bit more, and more and more and more. And he was like, here, let me try this. We went over to a friend's house and he was like, here, try this. And I was like, dude, I don't even know what this is. Like, and so I tried it and I liked it. And then that became my habit from there on.
Were you a snorter, a smoker, an injector?
I smoked it. I snorted it. I booty bumped it. I did. Yeah.
Boofing.
I did.
Good old fashioned boofing.
Yep. And so, yeah, I did it, and that was the thing, was I never wanted to be an IV user. So I tried not to do it that way, and so I most of the time was smoking it. I'd even put it in my pills. I take my pills apart, dump the medicine out and put it in the pills and take it that way.
You can just buy empty capsules on Amazon now.
Yeah.
You can just buy empty I think you could have went to CVS and just bought a pack of empty capsules, because and I was abusing weed at this time. I used to get RSO. It stands for Rick Simpson oil.
Okay.
It's like a black tar.
Mm-hmm.
That you push out, and you can put it on food, and it's like it makes the food edible. Because in Pennsylvania at the time, they didn't have edibles in dispensaries.
Okay.
So you had to get RSO and make your own edibles with it. And I would buy empty pill capsules and I would put it into the pill capsule and make a bunch of pills. This way I didn't have to put it on food. I could just swallow it and eat it.
Yeah, it probably tastes a lot better.
What's that?
It probably tastes a lot better that way.
A whole lot better. Yeah, because that shit tasted gross. Like, and it would be all sticky and get stuck to your fingers, and then your fingers would be all like, this shit was gross. And I'm so glad I don't do it anymore. Like, I can laugh about it now, but that shit was gross.
Terrible.
So you can put meth in the pill capsules.
Yep.
And just swallow meth and get high.
And swallow it and get high. Yep. So, but I didn't do the pills until later on into my addiction. For the most part, at the beginning, I just smoked it. And I smoked it probably about a year and a half, 2 years, and I ended up pregnant a third time. My third pregnancy, I did not get sober. I used for the first 7 months, and then somebody said, they're going to give you a drug test when you have your baby. And I was like, what? No. And then it would come to reality of, hey, you got to get sober. And so for the last 2 months, I got sober, and I had a perfectly healthy baby boy. My last
What
one.
did you do to get sober? Did you just go abstinent or did you go to meetings?
Nope, I just went cold turkey. The hardest thing I think I've ever done was just stop. And
Was your
no,
husband still using?
my husband was still using. So it even made it harder because he was using in the same room with me. And then it was like, okay, I can't even be in this room with you. Like, I just can't be in here. And so I would leave. And
Yeah.
so he continued to use. And as soon as he come out and we tested clean, we come home, I went
You know what
right back at it.
you know what the difference is? So like my wife still smokes weed.
Mm-hmm.
She has MS, so like she
Okay.
has a legitimate reason. We
Yeah.
both had the same sober date.
Mm-hmm.
Um, from alcohol. We both quit alcohol the same day.
Okay.
Um, and she still smokes, but she doesn't smoke like all day, every day like I
Yeah.
did. She literally medicates with it and doesn't overdo it.
Mm-hmm.
And she can smoke next to me in bed and it not trigger me. And I think the difference is because I don't want it
Yeah.
and you really wanted it.
Oh, I
And
wanted
you
it without a doubt.
Yeah, so that's I think you needed to be sober for your kid. I want to be sober and that's why it was a lot easier for me to be around weed.
Yeah.
And meth is a hell of a drug that, like, psychosis wise, did you have to deal with any psychosis while
I did.
pregnant?
I did. I did. And it was terrible. Oh, it was bad. And
Because
I
that shit
used,
can last up to like 9 months, I've heard.
yeah, it does. It lasts a while. It was bad. It wasn't something that I wanted to deal with. So I just wanted to smoke, like I just wanted to do it. But I knew wholeheartedly I didn't want to lose the baby that I had just carried for 9 months. So it was like, you make a choice to either do it or don't. But I knew when I got sober right then or clean or whatever, just to stop, I knew that wasn't the end. I knew I was going to go back and use. It was here. I was dead set that I was going to use again.
How old were you when you had your third kid?
I was 26.
Okay. I'm just trying to keep the timeline in my head of, you and your using career. So you're 26, you have kid number 3 with husband number 1
Yep.
and kid number 2 with husband number 1.
Nope. Kid number 2 with yeah, yeah. You have it
Okay.
right.
All right. I'm following along now. We're moving right along, Melissa.
All right.
All right. So you're 26. You have your kid. He's happy and healthy.
Yep. Little boy.
Okay. You have 3 boys.
I have 3 boys. Yes.
Okay. So he's happy and healthy. And how long did it take you from leaving the hospital to smoking meth again? How long was the waiting time?
The minute I got home.
The minute you got home.
The minute I got home. Because I
And
wasn't breastfeeding, and because I was like, I'm not even going to breastfeed because I already know what I want to do. Like, I was dead set that was what I wanted to do, instead of thinking it'd probably be better to breastfeed your child. That wasn't even an option. It was the minute I got home.
that's what I figured. And were you just being handed to it? Like, here, congratulations, here's your pipe.
I knew where my pipe was, and so it was like I just went right on in there, and that was what it was. It was like, here, take the baby. I had somebody help me. You take the baby, and I'm gonna go in here, and I'll be back out. And that's
What So did you ever have psychosis like while you were high? Like, I've heard of people thinking like people were in the walls, people were in the basement,
oh
and
yeah,
I I've had a sponsee before, and he was into meth himself, and he thought people were in his basement, and he lived in a trailer. Like,
yeah.
there was no basement. You know what I mean?
And it's funny you asked that because I just told this story the other day. I said, I had little green people that would dance underneath the door. And I would always ask people, do you see that? And they're like, see what? And I'm like, the little green people. And they're like, what? And I'm like, do you not see this? They're right there dancing. And they would look at me like I am completely dumb. And I was like, I don't get it. Like, I can see it. Why can't you see it?
The little green people.
The little
So you
green
didn't have shadow people. You had little green people.
I had shadow people too.
Oh, okay. You're fortunate then. You get them all.
I get them all. I swore there was a devil on the wall one time. It was coming out of the wall. It was bad. It was bad. Yeah, the psychosis is very terrible. I don't miss it.
Yeah, I can imagine. Because all my career of drugs and alcohol, there's three things I've never did, and it's crack, heroin, and meth.
Okay.
Those are the only three. I think I've done every other drug out there that you can name. I was a big downers guy. You know what I mean? Like, I liked my weed. I liked my alcohol.
Yeah.
I was doing cocaine, but only as like, I would do a lot of Xanax.
Yeah.
And then I would do a line of cocaine and kind of like candy flip or whatever the kids call it these days.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like one upper and one complete downer. I would mix up lines of like oxycodone and mix them up with my cocaine line and do one big line. I was a snorter.
Yeah.
I was addicted to snorting just as much as I was addicted to the drug.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It didn't matter what it was. I was going to snort it.
Yeah. And like I tell people today, like, my nose doesn't work. I can't smell nothing. And it's because of all the drugs I snorted, and it was like, I used to be able to smell everything, the flowers, the perfume, and I can put it on. I don't smell it. Like, I just don't smell it. So
I had a girl earlier this month. We laughed about it. But we were talking about how our noses got so clogged that we had to pick perk boogers and eat our boogers so you didn't waste your high.
Yeah, it was bad. And I was like, oh gosh. And some people will say, hey, how do I smell? Do I smell okay? And I'm like, you're asking the wrong person, because I don't know what you smell like, and I'm glad I can't smell y'all. But yeah, it's something that I wish I could smell, like to smell that perfume. I'll spray it, but I hope it smells good for somebody.
Yeah. It's like, and you miss the little things like the smell of rain.
Yeah.
Like, I love the smell of rain or the smell of gasoline. You know what I mean?
And I can't smell any of it. Nothing. And I'm like, when will it come back? And they're like, probably never.
So you were addicted to snorting and smoking.
Yeah.
Okay.
Snorting and smoking was the key points. As I got later into my addiction, people were like, bump it. And I was like, I don't want to bump. Like, I don't. And then they were like, booty bumps. And I was like, well, let's try this. Oh, that's where I went next. And it was a totally different high. It was a different high. So.
Okay, because you're the first person out of 200 people I've had on the show that's told me that they were a boofer. What's the difference in the high? And for those who don't know, booty bumps or boofing, it's when you ingest the drugs through your butthole.
Yep.
So for those that are, normies and don't know what we're talking about, when we say boofing or booty bumps, you can ingest even alcohol in your ass and you can get drunk. So you can do it with drugs too. That's for damn sure.
Without a doubt.
So now, talking to someone like me who has never experienced meth, what's the difference in the high from smoking it to boofing it?
I would say it hits a lot faster. It's kind of like if you were to bump it. That's what everybody explained it to. It's a quick, it hits fast and it's there. And that's exactly what it did. It was like, it could give you the best orgasm. And it was just like, well, this is what I like. Let's do this some more.
Yeah.
Because at first, when somebody said it, I was like, I can't do that. Like, how am I going to do that? Like, how do you do that? And then I was like, I'm not putting a needle up there. And they're like, no, you break the needle off. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, let's try it. Right away, and it hits immediately. Immediately. It is a different type of high.
Okay. All right. So now you're into booty bumps, and how long does that last? Of like, because I know how addicts are. We find something that we like, and I always say I'm addicted to one thing, and it's more.
Mm-hmm.
And it was more whatever is filling that void in that very moment.
Yeah.
So I know how people can get in certain tendencies, especially addicts,
Yeah.
to where once they find something they like, they religiously do that in that fashion for a certain amount of time. How long does that last to where you're like, this is what I'm going to do it for?
Well, I would say I still smoked because I didn't
Smoke
always
to me,
have.
smoke to maintain that. What's that?
I still smoked because I didn't have syringes all the time, but I started stocking up my syringes, and it was like, okay, we're gonna just keep them piled up. And so for the next, let's see, so it was about 30 when I started booty bumping, and so for the next 10 years,
10 years.
10 years.
You were either smoking or boofing.
Yep.
Okay. Did you ever have like your teeth get all fucked up from it?
My back teeth are completely almost gone. Um, and I had always told everybody, I said, when my teeth start falling out, I'm gonna quit. Like I'm really gonna quit. And nothing ever happened to the front. It was all the back. But I didn't quit. I didn't quit.
Yeah, because they weren't your front teeth that were up in
They were not
front and
my front
center.
teeth. No, they were everything back here. So it was like, okay, well, because I can remember one of my exes, like his tooth, literally the whole thing fell out, and I was like, oh God, like what are we gonna do? And he was like, it's okay, and I'm like, it's not okay. And I was like, okay, when my teeth start falling out, we're done. We're done. And so it didn't stop with the teeth.
Now, did you ever have any like um repercussions from the law in that 10 years?
Um, I had a few. I've had a few run-ins. By the grace of God, I was never thrown in jail. Um, my first run-in was with the game warden. Um, he had come up, like he drove by. We were fishing. He drove by, and then he come back by, and he drove back by again, and then he come back the fourth time. And I was like, okay, here he comes. And so I wholeheartedly didn't think I had anything on me. I knew I had prescription pills, but I thought they were just mine, for say. Because I wasn't a big pill popper. I didn't like pills. That made me very nervous. And so when he come up, he wanted my ID. I give him, my ex at the time gives him his ID, and he runs our stuff, and he calls me over to his truck, and he's like, do you have drugs on you? And I was like, no. And I was high. I couldn't even stand still. And we went round and round about not having drugs. And he said, can I search your car? And I was like, sure. And so he said, is there anything in there? And by this time we have two game wardens, two sheriffs, two K-9 units, 3 new Boston police. I mean, we're surrounded. And I said, sure, you can search it. So he searches it. And when he gets done, he calls me back to the car. And he was like, can you explain what this is? And it was a syringe cap. I had 9 extra pills. I had a Klonopin and some muscle relaxers that I shouldn't have had. And I was like, I don't even know what those are. And he was like, you don't know what this is? And I was like, no, not a clue. And he was like, do you play me for dumb? And I was like, no. And so we went round and round, and he said, if you tell me what you're using, I won't take you to jail. So in my mind, it kind of contemplated, like, because I had my son with me, my youngest, and I knew if I had said meth, what's he going to do? He's going to call CPS. They're going to come and take my kid, and I'm going to go to jail. And so I said medical marijuana. No, and that wasn't even a lick of what I was using. And he said, okay, is that what you're going to go with? And I was like, yeah. He said, all right. Well, he walked off and he called me back over there and he gave me a ticket. And I said, what are you doing? And he said, I'm giving you a ticket. And I said, for what? I said, I told you what I was using. And he said, you didn't tell me the truth. And I was like, yes, I did. So we kind of argued back and forth again. And it was just a drug paraphernalia charge, but where I was living, I couldn't have a drug charge because I lived in public housing. And I said, I can't take this. And he said, well, you can take this or I can take you to jail. And I was like, I'll take that. I'll take that. And that was a year before I got sober. And he had said, within a year, you will lose your company. I had my own company.
Doing what?
I owned a cleaning company. So okay. I was cleaning houses. And it was still somewhat running, but it was slowly depleting because I wasn't doing my job. And so
he said within a year.
Within a year, you'll lose your company. You're going to lose your kids. You won't have a car and you're not going to have a home to live in. And identically to a year to the date. I had no car. I had CPS in my life. I had nothing in my home to even sit on. I had sold everything I owned. Like I sold my furniture. I sold everything off the walls. I literally sold everything. And I didn't have my business.
Did you pick cleaning because it was something that you could just get high and do?
Not at first. I divorced my first husband. When I left him, I was sober. That was when I first got sober. I left him and because I knew my kids needed a sober mom. And I had left him, got sober. The judge, because I was homeless at the time, he granted temporary custody to my ex-husband. And so I lost my kids for a year. I stayed sober because I knew this was probably going to come up. You know, I knew without a doubt, you know, he would probably say, she's doing something. So I stayed sober. A year later, I got my kids back. And for 4 years, I had stayed sober, but I wasn't doing no meetings. I didn't have a sponsor. I didn't do anything that I'm doing now. And so I met the next new guy. He told me he was sober. And I completely believed him until I had a friend over. She was picking up my laundry basket to move it, and I heard tink. And being a meth user, we know what that tink is. It's that bowl. It's breaking. And I had just asked him sitting at my kitchen table, are you using? Because you have all those signs of using. And he said, no. And he said, why would you even think that? And I was like, because you're angry, you're happy, and then you're angry. Then it's just, you go from this to this, you don't sleep, like all the signs are there. And he was like, I done told you I was sober. And literally she had moved the basket and it fell off. And we looked at each other in our eyes, and his eyes got like huge. And I went running down the hallway and he come chasing behind me. And there it was, just sitting on the floor. She goes, I don't know what this is. And it was somebody that didn't have a clue what drugs were. And so I looked at him and, I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And I stayed with him, and I didn't use for the first 6 months of our relationship. Like he used, I give him the money to go and buy it, and he would do his thing, but I didn't use. And I took a friend home one day, one of his friends, and she said, I hear you're sober. And I was like, yeah, I'm sober. 5 years. And she's like, you want to come in and see my house? And I was like, sure. So I went on in. She showed me her house. We sat down at the kitchen table. She pulled it out, slid it over to me, said, there it is if you want it. And I couldn't say no. I used it and went back into it.
And how long did that run last?
4.5 years. So
Did you
yeah,
go back home and then did you start smoking it with that guy you were with?
I did. So somebody had called him and said, Melissa was using with so and so, and he said, I don't believe that, and he was like, she was, and I was like, how quick that business went from being here to the world. And
Yeah.
so he'd asked, and I said, no, I didn't. And he was like, well, good, because you ain't using. And I was like, well, if I want to use, I'm going to use. Like,
Yeah.
you're not gonna stop me. And so I started doing it behind his back. And then one day he was like, let's run around like chickens with our head cut off. And I was like, let's do it. And so I went right back out there.
Did your ex know that you had relapsed? The one that you had 2 kids with?
He was pretty sure. He's never said anything to me that I know you relapsed, but like hearing it from my kids, my dad said you were on drugs, and I would deny it, and I would deny it. And in that 4.5 years that I went out, I destroyed my kids. My addiction did. So they knew, they weren't stupid.
Yeah. Because they're at the age where they can pay attention now.
Yeah. So they're 29, 21, and 19. And so yeah, they're not dumb.
Yeah.
So but I did. I went back out there and I lived it up, or I thought I was living it up until I lost everything.
So you lost everything, and then in 5 years you gained it all back, and then in the next 4 years you lost everything again.
So I lost everything, and I wouldn't say I gained anything. I did, but I didn't, because I gained a house, and I gained, like I was able to furnish a house for my kids and all that. And I was sober those 5 years. And then I went back out, and then I lost everything.
Yeah. And that brings us to October of 2018.
Yes.
Now, did you go to rehab?
I did not go to rehab. I had a friend that was in recovery. He went to prison. We used together. And he was quick. He was a bumper, so he always was injecting. And he had always pleaded with me, Melissa, please don't do this. Like, this is the one thing that I don't want you to do. And so I never did. But he had gotten out of prison. He was sober. And I had asked him, I called him one day and I was like, can you take me to a meeting? And he was like, do what? And I was like, can you take me to a meeting? Well, he took me to an NA meeting. And I left there wanting to use. Like, it was so intense, and everybody talking about the drugs, and just that one there, they were very miserable. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't think I can do this. And so I went back home, and like a month later I called him back and I was like, can you take me to Celebrate Recovery? So that's what I do, is I do Celebrate Recovery. And he said, you want to go with those Bible thumpers? And I said, I just want to go somewhere where I feel like I'm getting what I need to get. And so we pull up, and it's a birthday night. They celebrate every once a month at the end of the month. And there had to be about 200 cars in the parking lot. And we're sitting there in the car, and he's like, you ready to go in? And I'm like, nope. He said, what? You wanted me to bring you to this Bible thumping church? Let's go. And I was like, I can't go in there. And he's like, do what? And I was like, I can't go in there. So I have social anxiety. And so when I'm in a new place, and I freak out. And so I'm like, I can't go in. And he goes, they have free food tonight. I said, I don't care if they got free food. I'll buy food. Like, we'll go eat dinner somewhere. Well, he gets out of the truck, opens my door, and he said, now get out. We're going in. And I was like, okay. So we got out. We went in. He puts my name in a drawings to win prizes. And so I was 30 days. So I went at 30 days. They draw my name for a prize. So I have to walk up in front of all these people. I'm so embarrassed. I'm so ashamed. I had a lot of shame and guilt. And then I walk up and get my 30-day chip. I don't go back for 9 months. I stayed at home. I isolated. That was what I thought worked for me. I isolated. I didn't leave. If I thought about using, I called the people that I knew to call that were like friends or family. Um, and so I stayed isolated for 9 months. And then I went back at my 10 month. And I've been there ever since.
What happened on the 10-month that you like were hooked? Because being at a birthday meeting is always a good meeting. There was a certain when I first got clean from opiates 6 years ago, it was in Los Angeles, and there was different groups of AA. It was the like hardcore AA, then it was the more lenient, laid back AA. And I would go to this meeting every Sunday, and they were the hardcore AA.
Mm-hmm.
And once a month, they celebrated everybody's birthday in that month. And they had like 7, 8 cakes. You know what I mean? Like the ether and all that shit. So I've been to those birthday celebrations before. Mm-hmm. If that meeting didn't hold your attention and keep you wanting more, what changed from meeting number 2 that meeting number 1 didn't give you?
I think it was more, I needed something to help me. Like I needed more than just being isolated, because I knew if I was going to stay here and stay isolated, I was going to relapse. I just knew that. And so I knew I had to be around other sober people. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to give it another try. And it wasn't a big night. It was just a regular night. I went in and it was a lot more peaceful and more meaningful, And so I started going every week. I was going once a week. Now I go twice a week. It's just part of my life now, people are like, are you always going to be a part of Celebrate Recovery? And I'm like, probably. I wasn't an addict for a year. I was an addict for 24 years. And so I'm not going to be healed overnight. I have a lot of work. I have a lot of trauma, and I have to work through those things.
Yeah, and it's definitely not an easy process to go through. Yeah. When I had my relapse with benzos, it was last summer, and I got my psychiatrist to prescribe me Ativan, and then I over medicated with that, so I then manipulated him to give me Valium. Yeah. And then I learned that I could snort Valium and get high, because you can't snort Xanax and get high. You can, but you get higher if you just eat it. So there's no point of snorting Xanax. But if you snort Valium, you do get high. So I found myself snorting my Valium until my wife called me out. She was like, your medications are running really low, and they shouldn't be. And if you're overtaking them again, you're not sober anymore. Yeah. And it hit me like a ton of bricks, like, oh my God, I'm not sober. You know what I mean? I didn't even realize it because I was so high that I didn't even put 2 and 2 together that I'm not sober right now. So when I came back, I went to AA at first. I took a month off of work. I went out on FMLA and short-term disability, and I took the month off to like really ground myself again. Yeah. And I started going, I did 30 and 30 with AA, and I figured that's where I need to be. That's where I found recovery the first time. That's where I did the steps the first time. Yeah. But after like a month and a half, 2 months, it just wasn't working for me. I would get a lot of dirty looks when I would share about drugs. Yeah. Because I've been so far from a drink right now at 4.5 years, that drinking isn't even a thought in my mind, but using is a thought in my mind all the time. So I found a Zoom NA meeting, because there's only like one NA meeting in this area. Okay. So I found a Zoom meeting every day at noon, and now I'm going through the steps in NA instead of AA. Because I don't know if you know the difference, but
a little bit.
people in AA can go through their first 3 steps in one night.
Oh yeah.
Like, it's not uncommon to go through your first, 3 steps. In NA, there's a workbook this thick,
Yeah.
and with a ton of questions you have to answer just to finish step 1.
Yes,
So
there is.
it's a lot more rigid of a program. So I was like, this is what I need for recovery number 2 for me. So that's why I do NA, and I do Gamblers Anonymous on the weekends.
Okay.
Because like I said earlier, I'm addicted to one thing and it's more.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I've been abstinent from gambling since July 13th.
Okay.
So I am definitely a multi-talented addict.
Yes. Like, and that's my thing is I went from drugs and alcohol to drugs to alcohol. Then I went to pornography. And that was my next addiction, was pornography. And I can say I have 14 days to start from pornography.
You're the second person out of 200 that has told me that. One of my first, he might have been like episode 5, really early on.
Okay.
Born in a very biblical house. Like his dad was a pastor. Turns out his dad, the pastor, was touching kids. Like, I mean, the whole 9. And then he discovered pornography at like 17.
Yeah.
And he almost lost his wife over it. Like, he was spending money on it because he couldn't use his phone because she took his phone.
Yeah.
So he would have to go and buy it, like, with money. Like, I'm like, you're spending money on porn, bro?
Yeah.
He's like, you blocked my phone.
Yeah. And like I blocked the websites on my phone, so it's not even an option to even get on it anymore. Because I just see myself spiraling. And it was all the time. And I was like, golly. And, I always hear everybody say, well, you'll go from one addiction to another addiction to another addiction. And I'm like, they are not lying. It is, if it's something, even if it's a working addiction,
Yeah.
You're going to go to something. And
for me, it's food or tattoos.
Yeah, see, that's mine too.
Yep.
I'm tatted up, and
how many did you get those tattoos in addiction, or did you get them in recovery?
Most of them are in recovery. Like I have the 2% on me. I have the broken chains. I have the serenity prayer. I
have one day at a time. I have carpe diem. I have let it be. I have progress, not perfection.
That's the one I like.
Yeah, I got progress, not perfect. It was actually the first tattoo I got out of rehab.
Okay.
I had one tattoo when I went to rehab 6 years ago, and I counted them a few weeks ago. Somebody asked me, how many do you have, like, at work? And I sat there and counted each one, and it was like 55. Yeah. And 54 are on my arms.
Yeah.
So
most of mine it's my arms, like I have a few Bible verses, and like I have my elephant, it's something that just makes me, and each tattoo has a story behind it. And that's how I can tell my story.
Yep. No, I feel the same way. I have a lot of nostalgia pieces. Like that S that everyone used to draw with the, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That S. I have that on my arm. Like I have the leg lamp from A Christmas Story.
Awesome.
So
love it.
I have a bunch of nostalgic pieces like that, but a lot of them were done. I got sober in LA, 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And I made friends with a graffiti artist really quickly. And she would do amateur tattoos in her front yard in Venice.
Oh, wow.
There would be meetings at her house, AA meetings, every Saturday at 9. So I would go to my CA meeting, Crack Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous. I would go there at 8, and then I would Uber at 8:45 from there over to her house in Venice, and she would give out free tattoos to people in recovery if they were at her meeting. So she didn't use any kind of stencil. She just free-handed tattoos.
Oh, wow.
And I trusted her completely, and she did a bunch of good ones. She did some rough ones, but I'd rather have the story be I got it in the front yard in Venice, California,
There you
than
go.
a perfect tattoo from some guy that I don't even know his name. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I like the story behind it more.
exactly.
So she's given me tattoos in my living room since then, because she travels through where I live and she'll always like stay the night. And she's given my wife tattoos. We got our wedding ring tattooed.
Okay.
We both have. She did our wedding ring tattoos for us 2 months before we even got married.
Oh,
We're
wow.
like, we're not going to see you again for another year, so we need you to give us our wedding ring tattoos.
There you go.
And then we got married 2 months later. So I've been wearing that wedding ring for 2 months before we even got married.
Love
That's
it.
faith. That's faith.
That is faith. Yes.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me and be so open with your story.
Oh, yeah.
Congratulations on 6 years, coming up on 6 years.
Yes, 6 years, and I just graduated with my master's.
And what?
Clinical mental health counseling.
Perfect.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I couldn't have done it without meetings, support people, my family, because now they trust me. And so I definitely couldn't do it without them.
Yeah, that's awesome that you did that. You know, people can go back to school at any stage of their life.
Yep.
And get that finished up. So that's awesome. You're a testament to what you can do when you put down the drugs.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt.
Well, have a great night, Melissa.
You too.
Bye bye.
Thank you.